right, buddy boy.
Who? Remember our deal, right?
Yep.
She remembers?
She remembers.
All right. How many in here would have any idea what apologetics is? You would? Okay. Do you think you do? Not at all? Okay, that's fair. It's not apologizing for something. Okay? Apologetics and apologies are two totally different things. This class is not about how to apologize. It's about something called apologetics. Give me your rendition of what.
Oh man,
I'm not for a definition.
I am not going to get a definition right, but it's basically the ability to back up what you believe.
That's a good start.
Okay.
Absolutely is. Yeah. So in this lesson one, we're going to define that briefly, and then we're going to go into what I mean by it with an example. To get it going is to see how we're going to actually proceed in this class. So this is some information on what apologetics are. A reasoned argument or writing in justification of something. That seems kind of tongue-tied and complicated, but basically it's saying that you give an argument that you think is reasonable because you're trying to justify something that you believe in. That's what an apologetic is. Or in the Greek, the word is, and that's it right there, but it means defense as a lawyer might give in a trial for his client, defending a client. So an apologetic is something also where we try to defend what it is we believe in with reason. And finally up there I've got that the foundation of our apologetic must be based in evidence. So most of the time when the word apologetic is used, it is used in relation to whether or not you believe in God. It's not the only way that that word can be used, but more often than not, that's what it means. So basically, it means Christian evidences. Why is it that you believe in a deity? What are your reasons? And too often I find that Christians don't have good reasons for why they believe. Even adults, not just kids. Get off your phone. Okay?
I was getting a notepad for this.
Excellent. Even adults don't have good reasons. Or if they do, they either have flimsy ones or they have very, very few, like maybe one, maybe two at the most. I think that there are hundreds. Now, we're not going to cover hundreds and hundreds of these, but in this class, we're going to cover a lot, and they're going to come from a lot of different angles. We're going to talk about the nature of evidence later on. We're going to talk about why these things point one direction. I think they point one direction and not the other. And I think after today, you will see a little bit about why how I'm going to approach this and what I believe. So, in other words, what we have here is that is there actually evidence for an intelligence beyond ourselves? Okay? Some people nowadays don't call that God, they call that, anybody have an idea?
A higher power?
Some, but the more scientific way to deal with it today is called intelligent design. All right? Yeah, we have things. I still believe that evolution is true, but there's intelligent design behind it. So there must be something besides something besides just random chance how things got here. But even those people that a lot of times admit intelligent design still don't want to believe that that intelligent design is a God. So we'll talk about that later also. So the real question is, what evidence do we have that God exists and that He is the creator of all things? And I'm going to emphasize over and over and over in this class the word evidence. Because once you say, I can prove that there is a God, you're making a false statement. You can't prove it. Okay? You can give evidence. And the other side can give evidence. And what we're going to find out is often the two sides are looking at the same evidence. But it's viewed by each side in a different way. we've got to figure out as people which way that evidence points. Is it more reasonable to believe this, or is it more reasonable to believe something else? All right? So, the first question, and this is not meant to be pointed, but I know for a fact at you guys' ages that there are some people that aren't sure. So, the first question is, do you believe that there's a God, or at least some kind of intelligence beyond ourselves? And that answer can be yes, that answer can be no, and that answer can be not sure. And if you have anything but yes, it's a perfectly legitimate answer. And I'm not going to put it down. What I'm going to try to do is convince you that it is at least unsure, but probably, I would hope, yes, by the time we're done. So, if you answer yes, inside your own head, then the question becomes why? Why do you believe that there is a higher power, that there is an intelligence, that there is a God? Any one of those three. And your reasons that we have for belief must come from evidence, not from feeling. There are people that are Christians, claim to be Christians, and all they do is they think they have a feeling that they know it has to be true. And that is a weak faith. That is not what I think we should be doing. I feel that it's true, but I've got evidence to back it up. Okay? That I think points in the direction that I'm trying to teach. Evidence from the universe is one kind. What do I mean by evidence from the universe?
All of creation.
Looking at creation. Okay? Looking at things around us. All right? What would I mean when I say there's evidence within the pages of the Old and New Testament? Caleb, you got any idea you could give me just a little bit of a inkling what's in your head? What do I mean by I can find evidence from the Old or New Testament that there is a God? Because the first half of this class, for quite a few weeks, months maybe, I don't know, is going to be dealing with the first one, evidence in the universe around us, something I call external evidence. The second part, once we get there, is going to be evidence from the pages of the Old and New Testament. And it is even, I have found as I get older, more powerful, if looked at correctly, than the evidence that's external. The evidence that's internal inside the pages of that book. Do you have anything at all that you can think of that is your, being more specific than Jason did? Do you like to be called Jason or JJ? You don't care? Okay. Whatever I remember.
That works.
Caleb, answer this. He said the universe. Think of something specific in the universe that you think might point towards there has to be an intelligence rather than just random chance. Is there anything you can think of? You be thinking next.
Everything's a little too perfect.
Okay?
Perfect distance from the sun, not too hot, not too cold.
Good one. Absolutely good. Perfect. You have anything at all?
We found scrolls that date back from all different times.
You're taking some internal evidence, and we're going to get to that way later on in the class, but that's a perfectly legitimate piece of evidence. And I agree with you. So what it tells me right now, just by talking to the three of you, is you've already thought about this. All right? Just by asking those questions now, I know that you're not just starting this for the first time. Okay? So hopefully what I can do from here on out is give you more evidence that can add to what you already have. And I'd like to be able to add a lot of things to that. So the first thing I want to just briefly mention before I get into the talk I want to do today is this guy. This guy's named William Paley. He lived in 1743 and died in 1805. He would have died about 50 or 60 years before Darwin wrote The Origins of Species. All right? But just because of the argument that he has in what he says, it tells me that before Darwin's theory ever became accepted, people were already thinking what Darwin was saying. Okay? Because this is 50 or 60 years before when he died, so probably 70 or 80 years before Darwin when he said this. And his basic argument was that a watch implies a watchmaker. So, why don't you guys pass this around? This is a little Timex watch, all right? I want you all to look at that one by one. Shake it up, look inside. Tell me what you see inside there, Grace. Just describe it.
Different pieces of like the inside of the watch.
Exactly. Different pieces of an inside of a watch. Just go ahead and pass it around. You know, I have had that, in that case, sealed up for probably 30 years now. And you know something? Those pieces have never tried or in any way come close to being reassembled into this watch. It's been a long time that I've had it. Very, 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 very long time. So I don't know if it will take millions or billions of years for this to become this, but obviously 30 years isn't enough. You kind of get where I'm going with this a little bit? All right? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to discuss not this, not what Paley said. I'm going to discuss today something that is more near and dear to me, and that is we're going to discuss cameras. All right? I don't know if you guys know this. I know some of the adults do. I have loved photography for over 50 years. It's something that I'm very good at. It's something that I studied a lot. I teach it. I take photos. And I have some of my favorite cameras here today. Okay? I actually have show and tell. So, this right here, don't laugh when you see it. I mean it. Don't laugh. This right here is probably my favorite camera. And you're going, no, that's a shoebox. Yeah, but I took pictures with it. Okay? It's literally. I honestly took pictures with it. See, a camera isn't anything more than a box that you let light inside. In fact, the word camera comes from the word camera obscura, which the word camera means dark chamber or dark box. And the photography, the word means to write with light. So basically what you do with a camera is you write with light inside of a dark box. That's all there is. But there's a couple of elements that are important. First of all, you have to have a dark box. All right? That's why the black paper's in there. The second thing you have to do is you have to have a door, and this one's got to be replaced someday, but a door that opens and closes so that light can get in, light doesn't get in. And if you guys are very, very careful, if you look at the right light right here, you're going to see a teeny, tiny, tiny, tiny pinhole right there. In fact, I'm going to come around because I don't want you poking this tinfoil and ruin my little... Can you see that tiny, tiny hole right there? Okay? Barely see the light. Look, you just barely looked at it. Can you see that? All right.
I think so, yeah.
It's a tiny, 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 tiny hole. Probably got to hold it up to the light so you can see it better. I don't know.
All right, I think I got it.
All right. See? It is actually a pinhole. It's made with a pin. It's why they call these kinds of cameras pinhole cameras. And if you don't believe that I actually took photos of it, or photos with it, these are the photos that I took.
That's too cool.
Yeah. Because there's only certain things that you need in a camera. All right? You need a dark box. You need a small hole that's called an aperture. You need a shutter, which is a door that opens and closes, and you need some kind of photosensitive material. All right? In this case, you saw the small hole, the shutter, and the dark box. These pieces of paper that I've mounted and developed since are the photosensitive material. They're just photo paper. So in order to take this, I had to go into a dark room, open up this camera, tape a piece of photographic paper inside, put the top back on, go out, set it on a table so it was very, 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 very still, because it takes probably a minute to take a picture with this. All right? Point it towards the subject, like I'm pointing it at Jason right now. Leave that shutter open for about a minute. Close it, take it back into the darkroom, take the paper out, put it through the process of the different chemicals, let it dry, and then that's what we got. Okay? Did that with you. Pastor, he wants to see a couple. All right? That's fine. Now, here's another thing. So in order to make a camera, this kind of a camera, really all you need is some glue, some scissors, some photosensitive material, which this is long past its prime. You need some tin foil to put a small hole. You need this to put the hole in. You need some black paper to line the inside of it, and you need a box. All right? Believe it or not, I've had these things right here sitting together for at least that 30 years or longer. They've never made a shoebox camera out of themselves. I keep waiting, but they don't. Never have. And I keep hoping maybe it'll happen before the end of my lifetime, and I'll be able to believe that things can happen by chance. But the longer I wait, the less I have the feeling that this is ever going to happen. But that's kind of up to everybody to decide. So, this is some of the ways that people used to capture information inside of a camera obscura before there was film. And you can see in this one and this one that the object goes through a lens inside the dark box, reflected up onto a piece of ground glass here with a thin piece of paper over it, and they draw it before there was film. And they did that same thing here in this great big thing where the guy's inside of it and he can draw. All right? That was done in the 1700s, probably way before that. All right? And then, of course, the advent of the modern camera was something that changed all that, because all of a sudden you had film. Some of you have seen film. Have you ever seen film before? Okay, good. You're the youngest, so I have to ask you that. So this is 4 of the cameras that I brought today. All right, we're going to go through them real quick just to show that they're all basically the same thing. So I just showed you the shoebox camera, and I told you the 4 basic things that it needs to be a camera, right? Camera obscura. The second one I'm going to show you is this one up here. This was my mom's Brownie camera. You open up the back, pull this whole thing out. The film was held by this. All there is to it is a dark box, just like this has, right? And if I push this button right here, and I'm going to try to do it so each one can see it, you're going to see a real small hole open up and then close real fast. See it?
No.
Right? So, does it qualify to be a camera obscura?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because it's a dark box with a small hole, with a shutter that opens and closes, and a place to put the photosensitive material, which this would be film that was bigger than this kind of film. It was, I think this was called 616 film or something like that. Exactly the same kind of equipment. Next, this is the kind of camera that takes this kind of film. This is an old 35 millimeter camera. And if I take a look, first of all, on the inside, and I open this up to what's called bulb. Bulb on this camera simply means I'm pressing an old bulb, which they used to call it that, and it opens up the shutter, and all of a sudden the light can get in. Okay? There's nothing in there. It's a dark box. Just like this one, and just like this one. Now, it's got some advantages. The film's smaller. I can take several pictures without having to go back in the darkroom each time. I can take my pictures faster, okay? There's some other things that are kind of cool about a camera like this. You can put various kinds of lenses on it, and that aperture or that door or that window that gets opened and closed, I can actually use ones that are different that can utilize different sizes, so I can let more light or less light in. See that, everybody? Okay? So the combination of one of these cameras with one of these lenses makes it a lot more versatile. One of the things I have, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, on the end of all the lenses that I own, and I own quite a few of them, is a protective filter. It's called a UV filter. Some photographers don't put those on there, but I've fallen down and actually would have ruined lenses before, so I keep that on the end of my lens. That's going to be important in a minute, and I'll tell you why. The last one I have is the camera that I use now, okay? This is this isn't mirrorless, I haven't switched, but this is one of the top of the line digital DSLR cameras that they make. No longer can I poke my finger all the way through it because there's a sensor in the way. So if I was to open this up and show you the inside, click the shutter, you would see this sensor. Now the sensor that I have in there is bigger than this Instamatic sensor, but it's basically the same thing. See that thing right there? That's a film sensor. Mine's probably about 4 times or 5 times bigger than that one in this camera right here. But since I haven't been able to find a big sensor for a reasonable price that's broke and I just want to show it off, I haven't wanted to spend the money yet, so I just got this thing to show people. So that's the film nowadays. Light hits it, turns it into electricity, it absorbs it, goes through a computer, shows up on the back of the screen. Okay, so it's all done with different kinds of photosensitive material, but it's still done basically all the same, all exactly the same way. No differences. So, what's happened over the years is that the cameras have become extremely complicated. All right? In fact, they're so complicated that they still have the same basic elements. They have an aperture, they have a shutter that flip-flops out of the way, they've got a dark box where the light is captured, or the light goes into, and they have a sensor back here that still captures the light. So it's exactly the same process, no matter if you're talking of a shoebox or you're talking about a modern camera. And this is what happens. Okay? There's a point at which the line of the light rays as they enter cross each other. Now, in a shoebox camera, that happens at that point, at that pin. In a lens, it happens at a certain place within the lens that they predetermine. All right, there's a lot of mathematics involved in that. It doesn't really matter right now. So what happens is that as that light comes in, the top of that, what it's taking a picture of, goes to the bottom, and the bottom of this goes to the top, and the left goes to the right, and the right goes to the left. So it's upside down and backwards inside the dark box. That's just the natural process of the physics of what happens. All right? So how do we get it back the other way? You'll notice on these pictures right here that this is a window. It was bright, but it's dark on here because it's opposite. This guy is on that side of the window, but in actuality, he was on that side of the window. And the picture was actually taken this way. All right? All I have to do is flip back upside up. So, what I'm trying to say is that something has to reflip our picture back to the orientation that we're used to seeing it. And that's done with film in the old darkroom. That's done in modern cameras with electronics and computers. Flips everything around. Then on the back of that screen or on our computer, or if we make a print, we see it the way that we would normally see it. But the camera sees it upside down backwards. Now, I've said all that to say one other thing. This is the point that I'm going for, and I got to see whether or not I've missed any of my notes because I haven't been following them, but I think I'm up to the point where I want to be. Yeah. So, why would I be telling you all about cameras when I'm trying to get you to agree with apologetics? Anybody have any ideas?
I bet you the eyeball works pretty much the same way.
You think? The eye is a very sophisticated camera. But it has all those exact same basic elements. All right? We've got a cornea, we got a pupil, we got a lens. It doesn't show it on this one, but we have a shutter, which is our... Okay, now this is a video camera that's in our head, not just a snapshot camera, so that our eyes stay open, we can continually see, so it's a little bit different, it's more sophisticated. And we have retina and optical nerve, that is the recording devices. Just like this. Shutter, UV, aperture, lens, photosensitive material, and software in the retina, optic nerve, and our brain that interprets. It's no different than this. Except for we're born with it. Somebody had to take and make this and think it up. They're trying to tell us that this happened by accident. I don't get it. Okay? I really don't. Now we're going to have a lot of examples like this. But to me, even if I only had this one, it's kind of a deal breaker. You get it? All right? So, I'm going to do some comparison here. Compare the eye to a camera. Both have a dark box, aperture, shutter, photosensitive material. A camera, if it's a fairly decent one, has somewhere between 12 and 14 stops of dynamic range. Now, dynamic range is what can that sensor or that film or whatever record from the darkest dark to the brightest bright. All right? This camera has a little over 14 stops, which is a lot. Most cameras don't go over this unless they are like really, really, really big $50,000 cameras. All right? And then they don't go much above that. But an eye, they estimate, they can't even tell for sure, is at least 20 to 30 stops. In other words, we can see deeper darks and brights at the same time than the camera can. Yeah, but this one was designed and that one was by accident. Yeah. Okay. My D850 has 46 megapixels, which is quite a few. There are some cameras that have more than that, but mine has 46. It's one of the higher end ones. The eye has at least somewhere in the vicinity of 600 megapixels. Can we see more detail than a camera can? In some ways we can, yes. And the camera sees in what's known as RGB, red, green, blue, and so does the eye via the rods and cones. So if we blow up the back of the eye, we've got the rods and cones. Some of you have talked about that in biology classes and stuff. Never, that's criminal.
My biology teacher never touched that.
That's absolutely criminal. I'm telling you, that's criminal. All right? What about you? In any of your classes, you've talked about that? Good. All right? So, what do those do? In a sense, the rods in the retina see color in shades of red, green, blue, which is abbreviated most of the time as RGB. So if you see an RGB cord, it means red, green, blue. And by combining different shades and intensities of colors red, green, and blue, you can get the whole color spectrum. All right, so you don't just see red and green and blue. You can combine those, and you see all the different colors that you can see, whether it's in a computer or a camera or in the human eye itself. It's very similar to what we see in a modern Bayer camera filter. So here what we're seeing is that there are cones and rods, there are cones specifically that see red, blue, red, green, blue, red, green. Guess what? In this camera right here, this digital camera, it's got the same kind of color scheme in that sensor. It sees reds, greens, and blues and combines them into the colors that we see. Still the same as the eye, isn't it? All right? No difference whatsoever. So, I think to add to this that not only is the eye a sophisticated camera, I don't understand how it didn't have a designer, because we know that these had to. So at that point, even with just this, maybe it doesn't take me all the way to believing in the God that I see in the Bible. That's where we're headed. But maybe it doesn't take me that far. But what it should do is say there's an intelligence out there that knows how to put this stuff together, because it couldn't be done any other way. That's what intelligent design is. And we go back to the watchmaker argument that I just talked about. This is William Paley's watch analogy. He said a watch it's a complex, it has a purpose, and it tells the time. An eye is a very complex thing, it has a purpose, and it helps us see. This one has a designer, it has a watchmaker, and this one, the eye, also must have the same thing. He said that in the early 1800s, late 1700s. I want to share with you one more quote, and it's going to take a minute to get through it because it's spoken in some little older English, so I want to make sure you understand what it's saying before we go to the last slide here. But this is the saying: to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd to the highest degree. Now, a little bit of interpretation. What is a contrivance? It's a mechanism. What he means by that is a mechanism. It's a thing that makes something work. And then what is, and I have trouble pronouncing this because the syllables don't seem like they should go where they are in this one. But this is inimitable, all right? It means that it's matchless. It means that it's unique. So he's basically saying to suppose that the eye, with all of its matchless and unique mechanisms that make it work. He's talking about the cones and the rods and the I mean, we got a pupil that gets bigger and smaller, like an aperture does. Oh, I forgot to mention, what is the I'll get back to this in a second. I was going to show you one other thing here. Yeah, what does that cortex do? You know, anybody know what your cortex does? Acts like a UV filter. So you don't scratch your lens and UV light doesn't get into your eye. That's exactly what this filter does when they screw it on the end of this. And most photographers put them on their camera, right? So all these things that we're talking about, he's saying that it seems absurd in the highest degree to say that they happen by accident. You know who said that?
Darwin.
Charles Darwin. The guy that is being shoved down your throat as the guy that invented or thought that there wasn't a God and that instead there was only accident. Charles Darwin said this about the eye. He's got a lot of other quotes too. We'll try to get to some of those as time goes on. Charles Darwin agrees with me on this point. All right? Questions? That's all I got today. Any comments? Oh, come on. You got one?
Can you go back a slide?
To the one before.